Not yet, I said. Maybe not ever. I genuinely don't know yet. That was the term. I know. His hand closed and dropped. I'm not asking. I just forgot myself for a second. Paper Vows. Episode 10. Pentimento. Written by Mia. The 4th. I sat with the word for the rest of the drive. The way you sit with a diagnosis you haven't decided whether to believe. I've been stopping them since before you came home. 3 foreclosures I had never known about. 3 times my mother's gallery should have quietly died and somehow didn't. 3 small miracles I had spent the last 18 months attributing to my mother's stubborn ghost, or to luck, or to the particular grace the universe sometimes shows people who love a thing hard enough, and every single one of them had been the man sitting 18 inches away from me on cold leather, not looking at me, his jaw set like a man bracing for a blow he believes he's earned. The man whose company killed her in the first place. I didn't say anything until we were home, until the glass house closed around us. All that light I used to find so beautiful that I now could not look at directly, because I had learned that morning it was raised by the same hands as the dark. The sitter left. Pip was asleep upstairs with the one-eared rabbit, and Adrian Vale stood in the middle of his own enormous, ridiculous, beautiful living room like a man waiting to be sentenced in a language he didn't expect mercy in, and I found that I had exactly one word left in me. Show me. He'd kept it all. That was the first thing that undid me, before I had read a single page, that a man so careful, so practiced at making things disappear, had kept every scrap of the one thing he most needed never to be found. He went to the safe behind the enormous joyless painting I disliked since the day I moved in, and he took out a folder gone soft at the corners from handling, and he put 4 years of his secret into my hands. And then he did the only merciful thing available to him. He stepped back and he let me read it the way I read everything in this world. Slowly, in order, the layers in sequence. It was all there, in the cold, flat language of money, which is the only tongue his world ever tells the truth in. Shell companies, I half recognized their shapes from Marcus's folder that very morning, except these weren't drowning the gallery. They were bailing it out in the dark. A mortgage quietly bought up and then simply, deliberately, never enforced. Creditors paid off through a chain of accounts built so carefully that even Marcus, who had reconstructed every other crime in Adrian's life, had never found this one. 3 foreclosure notices intercepted before they ever reached the gallery's door. Debts cleared in the small hours by a man who then went to enormous, painstaking trouble to make certain that no one, and most especially not me, would ever know there was anyone to thank. And the dates. God, the dates. I am a restorer. I read Provenance for a living. I know better than almost anyone alive how to lay a timeline flat and make it confess the thing the person standing in front of you never will. The first intervention was 4 years ago, the spring he found the Hart file, exactly as Marcus had said in the marble room. That part was true, but it was the part Marcus didn't have that took the floor out from under me a second time in a single day. It didn't stop when my mother died. He kept paying after, all the way through the 18 months she'd been in the ground. All the way through the long, bruising autumn, I came home and rolled up my sleeves and fought for that gallery with my bare hands, certain it was just me and her ghost, and a prayer I didn't believe in. I had not been alone in it. I had never once, not for a single notice, been alone in it. There had been a second person in every dark account, holding the place up from underneath the whole time, while I gave the credit to my mother's luck and my own stubbornness and stood in her gallery at night thanking the wrong ghost. "Why," I said, "it came out cracked straight down the middle. You'd found the file. You knew exactly what your company had done. Why not just write to me? Tell me the truth. Clear it in the daylight and let me hate you, and at least let me be free of it." And Adrian Vale, who controls the outcome of every room he enters, who negotiates the words "good morning," gave me the most undefended sentence I have ever heard him speak. Because the day I told you the truth was the day I lost the room. He wasn't looking at the folder. He was looking at the middle distance, at a gallery 26 years gone. Not you. I didn't even let myself want you yet, back then. The gallery. Your mother's 2 narrow rooms. I was 9 years old in there, Esme. It was the only warm place I could reach. She fed me biscuits and never once asked why a boy with that address never went home, and she signed my name in the visitor book like I was a real visitor and not a stray, and when she got sick I was too far and too late and too busy being important, and she was gone before I even knew there was anything to be gone. His voice didn't break. It just got very quiet, which was worse. So I did the one thing left that I could still do. I kept her room alive. In the dark. Where it couldn't be taken from me. Where no board and no cousin and no daughter could tell me I hadn't the right. Because the second I said it out loud, it stopped being the one clean thing I had left and became a press release. A managed disclosure. My guilt handled. And I would rather have died than watch the last warm room of my childhood turn into a line in my own reputation.
He finally looked at me.
I told myself secret was the same as clean. It isn't. I've always known it isn't. Secret is just a lie you've decided to feel good about. I know that now. I think I always knew it. I did it anyway. And here is the cruelty of the whole impossible day, the thing I still cannot forgive it for. The folder did not make it better. It made it so much worse. Because if Adrian Vale were only the man whose inheritance had drowned my mother's gallery, I could hate him cleanly, and clean hatred is a thing a person can pack up and carry out the door. And if he were only the lonely boy who had secretly kept that gallery breathing for 4 years out of nothing but love, I could forgive him. And forgiveness is a door you can walk through into the rest of your life. But he is both, in the same act, with the same hands, and they will not come apart. That is my entire trade, separating things. Give me a painting, a swab, and a long, quiet afternoon, and I will tell you which layer is the master's and which is some later, lesser hand, which is the true face and which is the lie smeared over it. What is original, and what is repair? I have spent my whole life learning to clean one thing gently away from another, and keep only what is real. And I sat on the floor of that glass house with 4 years of his secret spread across my lap, and I understood, with something very close to vertigo, that the one skill I have ever completely trusted had finally come up against the single thing it cannot do. Because the guilt and the love in this man are not 2 layers. They are the same brushstroke. He saved her gallery because he ruined it. He could never have loved that warm room so desperately if his own family's money hadn't been quietly killing it the whole time he hid there. There is no swab on earth that lifts the penance off the love, because all the way down to the canvas, to the ground, they are made of the exact same stuff. I am a restorer, and I had finally found the one painting in the world I cannot clean. I don't know what to do with this, I said to the floor, because I couldn't say it to his face. You've taken the one thing I'm actually good at, and you've made it useless to me. I can't tell what's real anymore, Adrian. For the first time in my whole life, the real thing and the lie are exactly the same color, and I have no idea how a person is supposed to live inside that. And then, because the universe keeps a cruel sense of timing and a tender one in the same drawer, there were small bare feet on the stairs.
Pip.
In pajamas a size too big, dragging the one-eared rabbit by its remaining ear, her whole face crumpled with the specific outrage of a 7-year-old who has surfaced from a bad dream into a dark house and found the grown-ups awake and inexplicably not already at her side. I had the dream again. She wobbled on the bottom step, accusing us both. We have never made her describe it. We know it's shaped by heart, the car, the phone that rang at the wrong hour, the two people who went out one ordinary evening and became, between one breath and the next, the reason she lives now with an uncle she barely knew and a woman who married him on paper. The one where everybody goes. And I watched it happen, the thing that happens every single time, the thing no clause in any contract could have predicted and no folder of cold accounts can touch. Adrian crossed that room before I had even gathered myself to move. He went down on one knee on his own absurd marble floor, level with her, and he did not tell her it was only a dream, the way frightened adults do, because he of all people knows that some dreams are just the truth playing itself again in the dark. He said, "I know. Come here." And she climbed into him, rabbit and all, and pressed her face into his neck, and he cupped the back of her small head in one enormous careful hand, and over her hair, he looked at me, not pleading, not managing, just looking, with the entire undefended wreckage of himself laid open. And I understood the exact dimensions of the trap I was standing in. Because that was real. Whatever else in this house was forgery, or penance, or buried lie under bright paint, the man kneeling on the floor holding a terrified child who was not his, who was never supposed to be his, whose whole claim on him was an accident of grief, that was the truest thing in the glass house, and I have restored enough masterpieces and enough fakes to know a genuine hand the instant I see one. His on that child was genuine all the way to the ground. Pip's voice, muffled into his collar, imperious. Esme, too. And what was I going to do?
Say no to that.
I crossed the cold floor, and I sat down beside the man I did not know whether I was going to leave, and I let a 7-year-old reach out and take my hand and anchor herself between the two of us, as though we were a thing she had every right to count on, a fixed point, a home, and we stayed there on the floor, the three of us, in the unbearable tender shape of a family I could not yet afford to believe in, until she fell back to sleep wedged between us with her rabbit and her small fierce grip, still locked around my finger. I carried her up. Adrian carried the rabbit. She would not surrender it without a war. So he walked behind us up his own grand staircase, holding a one-eared stuffed rabbit like the most precious object he had ever been trusted with. And if you had told me a year ago that this would turn out to be the thing that hurt the most, I would have laughed in your face. We got her down. We stood in the dim hall outside her door, too close together, the way you end up standing when you have just put a sleeping child to bed with someone. And for 1 second, and I promised at the start of all this that I would always be honest, so for 1 second I forgot the folder and the gallery and the 4 years, and I simply wanted him. The plain animal one of a person for the one who has started, against all sense and all evidence, to feel like home. And I watched the same thing land in him, the identical wanting, and his hand actually lifted halfway toward my face in the dark. And we both stopped, at the very same moment, because there was a whole damaged truth standing in the air between us that neither of us had cleaned back yet, and we were both, underneath all of it, people who knew the exact and bitter difference between wanting a thing and being allowed to have it. "Not yet," I said. "Maybe not ever. I genuinely don't know yet." That was the term. "I know." His hand closed and dropped. I'm not asking. I just forgot myself for a second. It won't. He stopped and didn't finish the lie, which was its own small, painful progress. Good night, Esme. And I almost made it. I almost made it down the hall to my own wing with my heart merely cracked instead of breaking clean through. And then his phone lit the dark, the particular ring he keeps for the trust, the one I had learned that very morning to dread, and he glanced at it, and I watched the blood go out of his face for the second time in a single endless day. He turned the screen so that I could see it too. A news alert from one of those financial sites whose headlines decide whether mergers live or die by breakfast. Already published. Already loose in the world. Already, by the law of these things, completely impossible to clean back off. Vale's CEO secretly wed daughter of gallery his own firm ruined. Exclusive, with documents. Marcus, Adrian said, very quietly, into the dark hall where a child slept and a rabbit kept watch, and our whole fragile, honest reckoning had just been taken out of our hands again. Didn't lose this morning. He only changed which room he was fighting in. To be continued. That was episode 10 of Paper Vows. If Esme and Adrian have your heart, the next episode is already waiting. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The complete book is on Amazon, and early episodes plus bonus scenes are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
Mia.
Thank you for listening.